Hello, beautiful sinners. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Psynergic, and today I'm taking the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator test. For those of you who might be new to the channel, my name is Sean. I have a master's degree. I'm a master's level clinical psychologist, meaning that I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and in particular, my area of clinical expertise, I guess, is more in the realm of assessments. We're talking like cognitive assessments, we're talking like neurological assessments, we're talking about personality assessments. Part of a master's program is 2 years, right? 2 years after your bachelor's degree. And that second year, you're off in an internship doing things. And my internship was particularly at a university hospital doing neuropsychological assessments. So I did give personality assessments. I gave a lot of cognitive assessments, tried to figure out things like cognitive abilities in clients or patients with Alzheimer's, for example. Or sometimes they had an aneurysm and we're trying to establish like where their cognitive abilities are at this point and how is their trajectory looking to improve during recovery. When the pandemic started, I was a PhD student, and this was the direction that I was heading in as well. I ended up leaving mostly because of the pandemic. MBTI, I guess I have to talk about what it is first. So the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator was developed by two individuals who are not psychologically trained, not even kind of. It was a mother and a daughter. They wanted to make this instrument to sort people into boxes, which is quite frankly a very old way of thinking now in terms of newer psychological ways of thinking about personality in particular. Quite honestly, even our diagnoses are much more on a scale than a box. And that seems to be the way that all of the research is pointing towards. So this is a very old, well, I mean, it's almost 100 years old now. This is kind of an old way of thinking about personality. So first and foremost, there is my personal already. Now, to be fair, Jung was kind of the basis of why they did this. They kind of wanted to use the theory of Jung a little bit. I'm not going to get into the little nitty gritty things. This is not what we're here for. We're here for the more overarching things. So I'm not going to get too technical, at least for the time being. The problem with this measure right off the bat is, just like with Freud, there was no testing of these kinds of things. Now, certain individuals have gone back and tried to say, well, no, they did. They definitely did right here. But I mean, there's inherent bias to some of these because they didn't just do, like they tested it on relatives and friends. Clearly biased results. Which, if you have done any sort of research or clinical research, you know that that's not a good indicator of anything because it just introduces bias into your results. Like a lot. In a scientist's view, that's not actually testing the measure. This was made in 1942. They started doing testing and validating their results eventually. The bigger issue for me, once it started gaining some traction, then people started to buy into it. The problem is that the methods, like I just indicated, weren't exactly the greatest. And they did get eventually a lot of people starting to take these things. Unfortunately, a lot of those were medical students, not a representative population. I think we can agree on that. Not everybody is a medical student, which always plays a factor even in today's research, because if you look at psychology pools, research pools, they're students trying to get credit for a course. It's okay to use that to kind of get base samples to kind of see, does this measure work, or is there just something really weird going on? It's not really good for a general sample. Right? And so, yes, did they get 10,000 nurses? Can we all agree that nurses they're great. I love nurses, but they're not exactly representative of the entire population, which is a problem. You can't even fully extrapolate that into an entire population. It's a population of nurses, but not the general population. This is kind of what happens throughout their entire process that they eventually get to a decade later. As far as validating, there's a lot of statistical issues that you could have with this, because remember, these individuals were not statistically trained. So they basically just said, hey, this looks like it works. We're going to use it. Whereas now it has to meet a certain threshold. If you're going to say something in science, you have to meet a certain threshold of significance. The thing with assessments, and what we have to remember here, my problem with Myers-Briggs in particular is that a lot of companies will use it to say,
hey, this person should definitely be the leader of our company.
And I'm like, that's not what assessments do. Like, even in cognitive assessments, when we're doing an IQ exam, we fully recognize that this is a snapshot in time. This changes. And the problem in particular with this type of personality test is if you take it one time, the chance of you taking it a week later and getting a different result is pretty high. That's test-retest reliability. And the test-retest reliability in MBTI in particular, it's not very good. There's always people trying to go out and prove something. First and foremost, if somebody says prove and they're a scientist, don't trust them. We don't use that language. Scientists don't prove things. In fact, that kind of goes against the scientific method, whereas you have a theory, you test a hypothesis, and you try to disprove that hypothesis. You're trying to break it down. We're not proving things. We're giving evidence to suggest something, because science is a living thing. It's living and breathing. It's always changing because our knowledge, our techniques are always changing, and we can get better information from better technology. So if anybody says prove that we proved this, I'm automatically like, And even in like papers and stuff, we say it's statistically significant, which gives evidence of. We didn't say we prove this, because if you say that, your paper is going to be desk rejected. That's how bad that is. They're not even going to send it out to people to review. They're just going to say, nope. Like, they're literally, like, I'm looking through all of these articles right now, and the first one that comes up, measuring the MBTI and coming up short, 1993. What was this other one? Moving beyond the MBTI, 2016. MBTI learning style, teaching style, discongruences. That was in 1991. Like, there are people out there who are really like Freud. Like, people like Freud, people who like, psychoanalysis, which are mainly just in New York at this point. They're the only ones that care, because the rest of the scientific community and clinical psych have moved on. And the same is true with MBTI. It's great for pop psychology, popular psychology, what makes it to the mainstream. It's great conversation. And for that whole purpose, it's fine. But unfortunately, you have companies who take it so literally that they promote people based off of it. And that's problematic for me. Or if you're making life decisions based off of your indicator, I'm like, there are better ways. Anyways, let's get into me taking this, huh? First and foremost, I guess we can call it a personality. There are better things out there. But the problem is I can't tell you about them because it introduces the possibility of it getting leaked. If I were to do that and then go on and try to get my license, which I don't really want to do, I would be probably denied instantly because you just leaked an assessment. Do I regularly make new friends? Depends on your definition of friends. I'm gonna say somewhat agree. You spend a lot of your free time exploring various random topics that, oh God, yes. Yes. Seeing other people cry, oh God, yeah. I didn't even have to read that one fully. You just say, seeing other people cry makes you want to cry, right? You often make a backup plan for a backup plan. No, I don't actually. I like to have a plan, but recognize that plan is going to change because you can't predict everything. You usually stay calm even under a lot of pressure. Are we talking this is another problem with this question. I'm already like, you're gonna see me break down questions apparently. In what situation? And this is the part where they would say, whatever situation you can think of. And I'm thinking, internally, I'm freaking out. Externally, calm as a bean. I don't know what that means. I just made it up, I think. Beans just lay there. At social events, you rarely try to introduce yourself to new people and mostly talk to them. Yeah, I'm bad at networking. For the most part. You prefer to completely finish one project before starting another. It says prefer, so I'm gonna go with that. You're very sentimental. Yes, way too much. You like using organizing tools like schedules and lists. Yes, I've run large labs. If you don't use something like that, you're not gonna make it. Even a small mistake can cause you to doubt your overall abilities and not, oh God, yeah. You feel comfortable just walking up to someone you find interesting and striking up a conversation. If they walked up to me, yes, but I have trouble walking up to them. You're not interested in discussing various interpretations and analysis of creative works. Negative, tricky. I'm disagreeing with that. Like, I literally have a whole series on this channel about doing that. You're more inclined to follow your head than your heart. Somewhat agree. You usually prefer just doing what you feel like at any given moment instead of planning. Nah, I have a general idea. You rarely worry about whether you make a good impression on the people you meet. Disagree. I worry about that all the time. You enjoy participating in group activities. No. You like books and movies that make you come up with your own interpretation of the ending. I do. Your happiness comes more from helping others accomplish things than your own accomplishments. Yeah, 100%. That's not even a question to me. You're interested in so many things that you find it difficult to choose what to try next. That's pretty true. You're prone to worrying that things will take a turn for the worse. Yeah, you should have seen me when I was a kid. Like, I've gotten it under control for the most part now. I literally worried about everything. You avoid leadership roles. Disagree. You definitely are not an artistic type of disagree. You think the world would be a better place if people relied more on rationality and less on their feelings. Disagree. I've said a number of times that I think empathy is the solving of many of our problems. You prefer to do your chores before allowing yourself to relax. Depends on the day, but yes. You enjoy watching people argue. Like argue, fight, argue, or like have a rational argument based on, this is not meant for me, this is meant for everybody. So I don't like watching people argue. You tend to avoid drawing attention to yourself. Very true. Your mood can change very quickly. No. You lose patience with people who are not as efficient as you. No. You often end up doing things at the last possible moment. Sometimes. You have always been fascinated with the question of what, if anything, happens after death. Have I? No. You usually prefer to be around others rather than your own. No. You become bored or lose interest when the discussion gets highly theoretical. Disagree. You find it easy to empathize. Easy to empathize with a person who's experiencing it. You usually postpone finalizing decisions for as long as possible. I would say that I take as long as I need for those decisions, so I'm going to disagree with this. You rarely second guess the choices that you have made. Disagree. After a long or an exhausting week, a lively social event is to You enjoy going to art museums. I do. You often have a hard time understanding other people's feelings. Disagree. You like to have a to-do list for each day. Like an actual list? No. I'm gonna be neutral on that one. You rarely feel insecure. You avoid making phone calls. Actually, no, I don't. You often spend a lot of time trying to understand views that are very different from your own. True. In your social circle, you are often the one who contacts your friends. If your plans are interrupted, your top priority is to get back on track as soon as possible. I'm more neutral in this. I want to get it back. It depends on what it is. You are still bothered by me. Yep, literally a decade ago, and I'm still thinking about it. You rarely contemplate the reasons for human existence. I used to do it a lot more than I do now, but it's less than I used to. Your emotions controlled you more than you control them. Disagree. You take great care not to make people look bad, even when it's completely their fault. Yeah. Your personal work style is closer to spontaneous bursts of energy than organizing. Yeah. When someone thinks highly of you, you wonder how long it will take for... You guys are getting a lot out of me today. You would love a job that requires you to work alone most of the time. Yep. You believe that pondering abstract philosophical questions of no. I think that there is a lot of value in that. You feel more drawn to places with busy, bustling atmospheres than quiet no. You know at first glance how someone is feeling. Typically? Yeah, I'm pretty good at that. Not always, of course. You often feel overwhelmed. No. You complete things methodically without skipping over any steps. It depends on what it is. I'm gonna be neutral now. You're very intrigued by things labeled as controversial. Definitely. You would pass along a good opportunity if you thought someone else needed it more. I have literally done that. You struggle with deadlines. No. You feel confident that things will work out for you. I hope that they will, but I'm not confident about that, so I'm gonna disagree. Here we go. Wow, okay. I'm still an INFJ, guys. INFJ. Look at that, still an INFJ. Like, I'm definitely introverted, but I've said many times, I would say that I'm closer to an omnivert, but definitely introverted. Intuitive versus observant. Yeah, okay. So if we're talking about the 5 personality aspects that the MBTI talks about, it is mind, energy, nature, tactics, and identity. Now, the identity one is new. And I think that there are other measures out there that do a better job of this kind of stuff, which is like the Neo. And these are assessments that you cannot get online. And that's why they're protected. Like if I were to show you individual items from the Neo, I would be in trouble for that because it would kill the reliability of that assessment. Now, the Neo's been around long enough that it's been leaked many times, but I'm using that as an example here. The Neo is 5 personality types. Started with 3, and then they moved on to 5. And this sounds like something similar. They started with 4, now they're up to 5. I wonder why. As far as the MBTI is concerned, they do mind, energy, nature, tactics, identity. But these are the categories, the categorical variables for the Neo, which is neuroticism, extroversion, openness to experience, agreeableness, and contentiousness. So let's take that. Now, these are the personality dimensions as opposed to the elements. The MBTI is trying to do something like that, but just in a less psychologically sound way. Let's talk about the mind, what they call the mind. I don't like these categories, like they don't make sense to me. This makes more sense to say energy to me because the way that I think about extroversion versus introversion, again, these are not categorical variables. This is what MBTI is doing, but we know that they're on a scale, right? They're on a spectrum. The best way to explain introversion versus extroversion, my question to you is, how do you get your energy? Do you feel recharged after you've been out with your friends? Or do you feel a little bit more recharged when you spent time alone at a park or you're reading or playing a video game, something like that? If you answered yes to the being alone and recharging, you're an introvert. You're more of an introvert. Now, the problem with the categorical 2 boxes thing is that I'm gonna take a big guess and you guys are gonna say that a lot of the times it depends. Are they close friends? Are you going out to a club or are you going out to the library or something? Because that's a difference for me. I can do both, but I know that I'm not gonna feel charged after I've been out to a club. That's the problem with these categorical values and why we in the scientific field of psychology have moved on from just putting people in boxes. There are way better instruments out there that I, as a clinician, as a psychologist, would use over MBTI. But that's not to say that there aren't good things about MBTI. I think that it gets people to have discussions about themselves in critiquing kind of way. Now, again, I have a problem when you use this kind of thing for making big decisions, or if you're kind of like saying, this is all I am. This is all I am. And I have to do this because this is my personality type. And I know that some of you are out there like, well, who would do that? Trust me, they're out there. Is it something that we can have conversations about? Yes. I think I roll my eyes every time it comes up because pop psychology does that to me, honestly, because when people start bringing up things that Freud, like ego and superego and the id, I'm like, that was over 100 years ago, right? It's important to recognize these individuals in the history of our field. And unfortunately, sometimes pop psychology lags behind, as we're seeing with MBTI, with Freud. Unfortunately, it's over 100 years. With these kind of things, it's easier to understand. It doesn't require a degree to understand what's going on. And I think that that's a problem with science in general, is that we don't know how to communicate sometimes with the general population because we're just so used to talking at each other. And I do say talking at each other because sometimes these things can get a little contentious. Sometimes people will take a theory or a hypothesis that was once used by some individual and they'll retest those results, which is a very important function within science, right? We want to make sure that not just that person's getting those results, we want to make sure that everybody are getting the same results, and there is a replication of those findings. It's very important. We want to strengthen those findings, and that's the way to strengthen those findings, by having somebody else who's less biased about the results doing it. Thank you guys for checking this out with me, having a good time. If you guys have any questions or anything else, make sure to leave some comments down below. We can chat about it down there. If you guys like this kind of stuff, let me know if you want me to do some other things and I can try those. We can do love languages. We can do all that kind of stuff too. If you guys want to talk about that, which is more of a Freud thing, by the way. It's a psychoanalysis thing, but I can talk about it and we can have good times with it. So thank you guys so much for being here. Do take care. Be safe out there. Wash your hands. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!